And we are so excited to be here to talk to you today about using Instagram to build community. We know that social media has this amazing ability to be a super powerful tool that can grow your business online, change your lives. It definitely changed ours, but it can also feel really stressful. And so Maria and I are here. I'll tell you a little bit about us, but to talk a little bit about how using Instagram to build community is actually the best way to get over the algorithm and actually make impact in your business. And so we're really passionate about that, and we're excited to share with you why. So to tell you a little bit about us, this is Maria, who is the lovely co-founder with me of the Social Snippet. I'm Christina, and we are super passionate about building digital communities, whether this be ours or any of the 50 plus retainer clients that we're really blessed to work with day by day. And so we run a full digital agency. We do all things social media, lots of other things, podcasting, the whole shebang. If you need something online, we know how to do it, or we know somebody that does. But we have been so passionate about helping people build communities online. And we are really strategic when we say the words building community online, because what we don't mean is get a ton of Instagram followers. What we don't mean is, get to 100K followers. We don't mean getting 1 million story views. That is not what we mean when we talk about the social media that we do. What we do mean is that we want people to have strong, passionate, raving fans of their businesses. And where we're coming from is I was actually working as a personal development coach as a little bit of a side hustle. That was my old life. And I brought Maria on to my team to be a virtual assistant at the time. And she was so much more than that. She did so much. But and Maria and I were working really hard, and people kept coming to us being like, oh my gosh, like your social's so good. Anytime we sold something, it would sell out. We would do workshops, we had masterminds, we were running events, like all the things online in the COVID times, or the more serious COVID times at least. And while we were, building out that community, it was so strong. And I had book clubs, like it was just like I had a podcast, like it was just an empire was being built over here. And what we were really struck by was how many people were coming to us with, business questions, business advice. But really what they were really pointing out to us was how strong our community was, like how everybody who, was buying our things was really engaged with us, how we were able to sell out things that other people might not have been able to. And so we were really leaning into that. And so I went to Maria, I begged her, she said no. And then I begged again, and we started the Social Snippet, and we've been kind of growing ever since. But Maria and I have both been, and we grew up using social, but we've also both been working freelance social for years. And so our skills came together, and we decided to start really focusing on building community. And so what our focus is for today is to just talk to you about how you can finally use Instagram to make impact in your business. So not just, using Instagram to gain followers. We know that you could spend, 12 hours on Instagram. You could have 100,000 followers on Instagram and not be making one sale in your business. The key to it is actually building a community that knows, likes, trusts you, and wants to buy from you time and time again. So we're going to kind of go over 3 big concepts of how we built community and how we help our clients build community, because this is foolproof. It's algorithm proof. You can do it today, and we can't wait to see you do it. So I'll be passing off the torch to Maria to get us started.
Okay, so tip number 1 is finding your community. And this sounds simple, but it's a little bit easier said than done in some ways. So I think number 1, a big part of this is showing up. And this doesn't just have to be online. This can also be in person. I think we get really focused on the online aspect of this, but it can actually be super helpful to get in real life rooms, like back to the good old days, pre-COVID, do real life networking, make those connections, and find the people that you resonate with, find the people that resonate with you, grab a coffee with somebody, tell somebody about what you're doing, just showing up wherever you are and being present. And this is something Christina actually does so well, whether she's, buying a taco, getting her hair done, whatever she's doing, she's chatting with these people. I went once with her to get a blowout, and I could not believe how much social media advice she was giving to these people. But I think we often get really caught up in these like online relationships and where am I going to show up online. So I did just want to make the comment of like there are so many places you can show up in real life too. And like we've recently joined our local chamber of commerce, which has been super amazing for us. We do, like you may have seen if you follow us on Instagram, we do a lot of masterminds and we make so many great connections in person, and those in-person connections turn into your online community. Like we have so many people from this mastermind that we're in that are a part of our online community now. They make up a huge portion of it, and don't underestimate the power of those relationships, especially with it in person. You can really get people's vibe, you can get your vibe across, and you can find people that really, really resonate with you. And another important thing to think about here is, where does your ideal client hang out? So this goes for both in person and online. And a huge reason why we do so many masterminds is because for us, like our ideal client is in a mastermind. Our ideal client is an entrepreneur who's trying to make themselves better, learn and grow and do all the great things, right? So really thinking about who is my ideal client and what types of activities are they doing, either online or in real life, and then becoming a part of those activities, joining those activities, showing up at masterminds if that's where your ideal client is, showing up at coffee shops if that's where your ideal client is. Maybe they're eating tacos. Like there are so many different places you can find them. And online, especially, like there are so many groups. So joining memberships, free Facebook groups, coaching programs, summits, like going to online conferences, all these different places are places where you can find your community and make these connections. And I think a mistake that I've made in the past that Christina really helped me sort of see the light on in this realm is it's tempting to show up at these things and just say like, I'm here and I've done it, like check, I've accomplished what I need to accomplish. You do need to go one step further in making those personal one-on-one connections. So one thing that we do all the time now that has worked super well for us is if we're attending an online summit or a conference or something like that, even just like a little webinar, making connections in the chat. So if somebody says something interesting, responding to them, sending them a little like one-on-one message in the Zoom chat, dropping your Instagram handle and giving a little bit about who you are and what you do and sharing that, just getting connected with people instead of just showing up and attending and being a participant. Try to take a little bit more of an active role and really lean into making those one-on-one personal connections. Christina, I don't know if you want to add anything there, because I know you're a pro at this. This is where I learned all of my one-on-one connection making in these Zoom chats and the online world from you.
Oh, you're so kind. I think the ideal client hangout piece is really, really great. And one of the things I will say is lean into methods that feel natural for you. So I am like a super connector. I love talking to people one-on-one. I love learning about them. I love connecting them to other people. That's a super natural state for me. But if, showing up on Instagram and then asking people to have online coffee chats causes you anxiety, then that's probably not the most natural state to make connections. Or if sending someone a voice note isn't for you, that's fine, right? So I think it's about finding what works for you. And especially on a platform like Instagram, there's so many ways you can be making connections with people, right? Commenting on people's stuff, replying to their stories. We'll talk more about these things in a minute. But whether it's your local community, your Instagram community, your online community, your LinkedIn community, whatever it is, you find the people where you like to also be. And I always say this about reels. And if you've listened to us or you've ever listened to our podcast, talk about this all the time. I'm like, you don't want to look like you're in a hostage situation while you're dancing in a reel. And, you want to make it look like it's fun because then people want to be part of it with you. And so it's the same thing with showing up on platforms is you want to make sure that like you're showing up for your ideal client and, you're excited and you're in your best energy because then people will be much more attracted to you. So definitely something for you to think about is like figuring out what communities you want to show up in, and don't just join like $135 communities. Like it's not worth it. But I've joined $35 communities that have made us $35,000, right? Like, and it's just been by showing up and really just being there for people, which I'll talk about next in the next slide.
Yeah, I think I really like the service kind of approach that you take to it too. And joining these communities from a place of like, what can I bring, instead of, oh, I'm paying $35 a month for this membership, like I have to get X many clients out of this to make it worth it, and like going down that rabbit hole of the ROI.
Mhm.
try to leave that to the side and just show up as your authentic self in these communities and pour into them, serve them. We jump on free, like we give people free advice all the time, so often unsolicited. So if you ever get a voice note from us in the DMs, look out. It comes from a good place, but we're known for our unsolicited advice. But we are just like obsessed with giving people free advice, and it comes from a place of we truly want to help them. But what that's done for us is it makes people pour back into us. They learn to love us, they appreciate our advice, they appreciate the time we take to give them the advice, and they end up referring people to us or hiring us, or it just ends up benefiting us in the end. But I
Mhm.
think what helps me a lot is coming into those communities with that perspective, because it takes the pressure off of like that awkward networky feeling, and it just be yourself, just give free advice, offer some value, and you'll fit right in.
Mhm. Awesome.
So my last point here is about engagement, and Christina mentioned this in her little chat, but this is something we do for all of our social media clients. And really where it all needs to begin, like we've been talking about, is with your ideal client. So before you start with any sort of Instagram engagement, get really, really clear on who your ideal client is. Like, what type of person are they? What does their daily life look like? Like, what do their habits look like? Do they drink coffee? Do they eat tacos? Where are they spending their time? Like, what books are they reading? Like, get into the nitty gritty. And I know some people like to do like, this is Jessica, she's 34, and you don't necessarily have to make it a person, but just start brainstorming, if you haven't already, ideas on like, especially for this purposes, like who are they following? What are they reading? Maybe what podcasts are they listening to? What content are they interested in? Like, what brands do they buy from? And a lot of this is just guessing, but think about who your dream perfect ideal client is, and think about the types of things that they would do, the types of behaviors they would have, the types of actions they would take, and the types of places they would be hanging out. And then you engage with them. So this is what we do. We find these people in all of these places, like I mentioned. So for the what are they reading example, if they're reading Brene Brown, go to Brene Brown's page, go to her tagged posts, and now you have a whole audience of people that reads Brene Brown's books, and they're tagging her saying, look, I'm reading your book. Find those people. So if your ideal client you think listens to the Lewis Howes podcast, go to Lewis Howes podcast, go to one of his most recent reels. Who are all the people that liked that reel? Go through and find these people, find your ideal client where they would be naturally hanging out, commenting on things, tagging people in things. We have a whole, if you need ideas on where to find your ideal client, like this is my jam. So send us a DM on Instagram. We'll have our Instagram on the last page of this presentation. And then once you find them, you're going to want to like a few of their posts and then leave one or two meaningful comments on their posts. No fire emojis, no like love this with a thumbs up, like actually read their caption, find a post that means something to you. The author example is great because if you've read the book, you can just be like, I love this book so much. Like, but actually leave a comment that like you don't sound like a bot and doesn't look weird and is like an actual thoughtful, meaningful comment. And the whole purpose of this is to get their eyes back on your profile. So they're going to see your meaningful comment. They're going to see that you liked a few of their photos, and then they're going to go to your profile. And then the idea from there is if they like what they see, if you are their vibe, then hopefully they follow you. But the general idea is just locating these people where they're hanging out online and engaging with them so that they are brought back to you and then hopefully follow you, and then they become a part of your community.
Awesome. Also, Maria's mentioned tacos 3 times so far today, so we know what she's about to have for dinner.
I've been eating so healthy. I'm just like dreaming of tacos over here.
Oh. So the next piece that we love to talk about is cultivating meaningful relationships. And the reason for that is because it's so easy online. Early on, people were really getting into this like follow unfollow game, right? Where you'd follow someone, you'd unfollow them, you'd get into a follower loop, you would just try to like gain that number. And I'm not going to lie that we were also there. So Maria and I, when we were starting our business, like, yeah, we definitely did follow and unfollow. We tried to get more followers. We were excited about it. And then when we pivoted, we realized that those people actually who we were following and unfollowing, those weren't our community members. Like those weren't the people who were, coming in and excited. And yeah, maybe I'd collect an email every once in a while, or someone would join my lead magnet, but it was never meaningful. And that was really important to us as we were kind of developing all of this. So some things that you can do to really cultivate meaningful relationships with your community is one, a really easy one that you can do is replying to stories. And so that's actually cultivating with your current community. So a lot of the time when we talk about Instagram growth and social media growth, and we try to like hack ways to talk about it, we're always like, oh, like, you go and you find people and you bring them to your page. You also, once they get to your page, you want them to enjoy their experience, right? It's like, I'm going to a restaurant. You do all the advertising for a restaurant, it's a new Thai place, and then they get there and the pad Thai sucks, right?
A taco place?
No, I went pad Thai. I had to, that would have been easy. That would have been an easy segue. But the pad Thai sucks and they're not excited about it. That is the end of the restaurant. Right? There's never going to be a referral because I don't care what anybody says. Your largest client base is probably coming from referral. I don't care how many Instagram ads you run, and that's coming from us. So we know this from firsthand. We literally didn't even have a website and people were hiring us, and because they just trusted us. And so I think one of the best ways that you can really continue the growth of your business, and especially on Instagram, is really leaning into your original peeps. So I love to celebrate the people that we work with, but also the people that we know on Instagram. And you never know when those people will become a client. So there's been people who have started working with us a year after they follow us on Instagram. And, we've been just celebrating them, which is the last point, but really just like replying to their stories, like when they post something cool, being excited about it, knowing a little bit about their business, really trying to connect with them. And not in a sneaky kind of way, but really showing people that interest. So what we recommend is 5 days a week. If you want to do outward engagement, which is where you go and you find new people to engage with, but also spending 15 minutes a day, just replying to your people and really just showing up for them. The next is finding collaborative opportunities. And this one is a huge one. So when the number one thing I would say that's going to grow your audience, like if I was going to do one thing, I had a gun in my head and I had to give you one thing that was going to grow you online, it was going to be renting other people's audiences. So what you want to do is you want to get in front of audiences that are lookalike audiences for you. So for example, we're a social media agency, but we also do podcasting, all that stuff. So Maria and I, when we do our own personal brand stuff and we're showing up on podcasts, we're looking for communities of entrepreneurs, small business owners, that kind of thing. That's who I want to do presentations for. So, would a group of teachers really benefit from learning how to do social media? Sure. Would we do a session for them? Yes. But that's not my ideal client, right? Like unless the teachers are also side hustlers in some way, but not likely. They're very busy. So really what you want to do is be finding opportunities that you can work with other people and rent their audiences. But you need to remember that, these collaborative opportunities, they take time to cultivate. So what I wouldn't say is, you find somebody online on Instagram and you message them, you're like, hey, you have a lookalike audience, like, let's do a live. That's not the way I'd do it. That's not the way I would do it. I would start by sharing their things if it's in alignment. I would start with some good DM conversations. I've made some amazing relationships just in the DMs and making some good connections. So you make some good connections, you end up, messaging, you do some stories, and then you can do things like an Instagram live or a collaborative post or run a webinar together. Those are really powerful, but you want to be showing up for the other person. So even some of my friends, they run things like networking hours and stuff like that. I make it a point to go. When our friends run events, we like to celebrate them. If we can go, we'll do it. Like we try our best to be like in community with other people. So you want to find people who you can collaborate with and really just engage with them. But one of the things to also remember is to give without needing to receive. So actually, I just listened to an Alex Hormozi podcast about this. It's the podcast title is How to Network with Billionaires. And the whole premise of it is that you shouldn't be networking with people with the anticipation of a return. So for me, for example, I reach out for people all the time and I'll do e-coffees and they're great. I have no expectation. I don't expect for them to come on my podcast. I don't expect for them to even tag me on Instagram. I'm not worried about it. But a lot of that stuff just naturally happens when you're in the energy of really just giving. And I also like to go above and beyond. I love to give to these people. So whether that's offering to guest coach in their community if they're looking for it, whether that's, posting for them. Hey, do you have a launch coming up? I'd love to share that with my audience. I would love to add that to my email list. Just giving. And you have no idea how far that's going to take you. And even if that person might not need your services, they might have a friend that does, and you're top of mind because you're doing them favors. So you don't want to be like, hello, I posted on Instagram and now you owe me a favor and now it's time to pay up. Like that's not really ideal state. But really what you want to be doing is just pouring in to these people and really helping them like in whatever way they need. And it will come back when you have your launch or something is exciting for you. So really cultivating meaningful relationships is the key way to grow online, if you ask me, but you really just pouring in as much as you can to the people online.
Yes, love it so much. Okay, so tip number 3 is to create content for your community. And what we really mean here is anytime you're creating content, your community, your ideal client, whatever you want to call them, they need to be front of mind. So you're not creating content for you, you're creating content for them. And I think it's really important here to think about like, what questions do they have? What are they struggling with? Instead of thinking about, oh, maybe you really want to talk about something, but it's not something your clients actually are having a problem with or are struggling with. So does it make sense for you to be talking about it? Of course, it's good to find things that light you up as well, but it's really, really important to make sure that you're speaking directly to your audience and to your ideal client. So what do they want to know? How could you give more value to them? And if you don't know, just ask them. I literally posted a story today that was like, what do you guys want to see from us? What are you struggling with on Instagram? If you're struggling to get people to answer, give them a poll with options so they can click something, ask people one-on-one. Going back to the service component, this is another great way. So like if we're giving people free social media advice, I'm taking note of like what questions they're asking, and those questions are becoming content later. So pay attention to what questions people are asking you, what you see people are struggling with. You can also use tools like even just go to Google and see what people are searching about in your niche, but really finding ways to talk directly to them and create super valuable content that they will appreciate and keep following, right? Like we talked about finding the community, bringing them to your profile, but once they're there, once you're working to create the relationship, you also need to be giving them value so that they stay and they feel like a valued member of your community. And I also think it's really, sorry, you go.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's really important to lean into like your authenticity here. So like, what voice do you want your brand to have? Will your community appreciate funny posts, memes? Like we hear all these things, oh, your post should be like educational, inspirational, or I can't even think of what the third one is right now. It doesn't have to be anything. It should just be what your ideal client will find valuable, what can help them, what can bring them further along, what can move the needle for them.
I was going to say as well, the great thing about Instagram is that you can really use that as like a test platform to see like what people like and what they don't like. So even taking it one step further than what Maria's saying, where, you're asking people what kind of content they want. Like if you have a launch coming up or you have a dream on your heart and you're like, hey, would you be interested in this? People will tell you. And you'll have raving fans that you have extreme access to that watch everything you do and will tell you, no, I don't want that. And that might save you thousands of dollars because you're not going to run that retreat in January nobody wants. And so like we've done this too, where, I've had a dream. I'm a manifesting generator. I have many dreams every day. But I've had a dream that I've posted and I'm like, oh my God, how good is this idea? And it's not a good idea. And I was unaware. And so really leaning into them and asking them, like, what do you like? What don't you like? When you have a silent launch or a launch where maybe it doesn't go the way you were hoping, asking people for feedback, like, hey, was now a bad time? Oh, I didn't realize that you guys weren't interested in this right now. We've had great launches and we've also had bad launches. And, timing may have been a part of it. Messaging may have been a part of it. Maybe not enough warm up. Like all of those things are really important. And it's actually really helpful for them to actually be part of it, which is the other piece I was going to say as well, is that people want to be part of your journey. So if you're posting valuable content, like people don't be so paralyzed by the idea that like, oh, I can't post that, or I'm like worried about what people will think. It's like people will actually want to see you be successful. People are excited about it and they want to be part of your day one crew. And so asking questions and letting them be part of your growth is really helpful, because then they actually feel like they're a part of it. So when they make an investment, it's even more meaningful, because they may have not invested in the first retreat, but you had a second retreat and it sold out and people were like all in on it, but they're so excited about it, right? Because they saw it to come to fruition. So never take for granted how important it is to like warm up your audience for stuff. And that's where content comes in, is like when you're warming up your audience, your sales even just get better and better because people are like itching for it.
Yeah, totally. I love that point. And we had a silent launch recently where I started thinking like, oh, maybe this product isn't right. Maybe people don't want this. And I just asked someone who I thought is someone who I would classify as our ideal client, and said, what do you think about this? And she was like, oh, I'm gonna sign up for that. Now is just not the time. I'm like so busy with things right now, but like I'm gonna be purchasing that. And I was like, oh. So I think, and you'd be so surprised how willing people are to share, right? Especially if you're showing up authentically and vulnerably and just coming from a place of like, hey, I just want to be better and I'm asking these questions. People love to share their input, and like Christina said, then they're invested in the process. And when you're like, Christina has had dreams that have died very quickly because of Instagram polls, but when people are interested in these things and we're like, hey, what do you guys think of this? And we're putting polls together, all those people that are voting, like Christina said, are like along for the ride. Like they feel like they're part of it. They're building it with you. They're super excited. So it's like the best form of marketing you can do, because you're educating them on it and telling them about it without it feeling like a weird sales pitch.
Mm-hmm. And oh my goodness, my little alarms. I was gonna say the other piece too is that I also like an example of this was actually when we launched like my podcast. Was I had this like kind of dream on my heart, and I was like, I kind of want to start talking about things more, and like people have all these questions for us all the time, and I'm doing the same thing over and over again. I would love to just like get a place where I can talk to my high level friends and like bring guests and like record with some of my mentors, and like, I don't know, what do you think? Maria was like, yeah. And Maria's like the best business partner ever. She just lets me do whatever I want. And I brought it to the Instagram gang, and I was like, what do you guys think? And people were like, you need to talk about this. Like, have you thought about this, Christina? Like, I would love to be on your podcast. That would be such a dream come true. And you also, one of the other pieces too, is just as a reminder, and this is more of a mindset thing, which we're not mindset experts. We never pretend to be, is that there are people out there waiting to work with you that you don't know yet, that are watching every single one of your stories. We have a mentor who said to us once that somebody made a $30,000 investment in their business, and they had watched a few stories, never participated in a poll, never really liked anything, but like was watching intently. We've had the exact same thing happen. It just wasn't $30,000, but we have had people like make huge investments to work with us, and they were like, I've been watching you for 6 months, right? Like, powerful. So just keeping that in mind when you're building your content, maybe you're not getting the same kind of traction you're excited about. Remember that there's people out there who are like hyping you up and you don't even know it yet.
100%. Totally agree. To jump down to the second point here, you're an expert, your audience is not. So your audience is likely following you because they need help with whatever you're an expert in. So a lot of our audience wants help with social media. They want tips, they want advice. So if I'm talking about like CTAs and CPAs and CTRs and affiliate marketing and engagement rate percentages, like I've lost 75% of our audience, because I know what all these things mean because I'm the expert. But what I like, my job as a content creator in this field is to simplify it and make it accessible for my ideal client. And just think about what type of knowledge your ideal client has. We had our first meeting with our accountant like way back when, and I asked him, like, I can't even remember what the question was, but I was like, I have the stupidest question for you. I don't know anything about accounting, and just going to preface this, but here we go. And asked him it was probably about write-offs or something. I don't know. But it was like, first of all, there are no stupid questions. Like, you are hiring me to be an accountant because I'm an expert in accounting. I don't know anything about social media. So like, you don't have to feel bad about asking me questions, because the whole point of me being here is to explain things to you and make them easy for you to understand. So instead of getting caught up in the jargon, and it's tempting because you want to sound fancy, right? You want to sound like you know what you're doing, like you know all these terms, and like you're just the ultimate expert. But the one thing that experts are really good at is simplifying messages so that anybody can understand them. And if you're speaking in a language that your audience doesn't understand, they're not going to feel like they belong. They're not going to feel like they're meant to be in your community. And you really want to make sure you speak to them in a way that they can understand and they can actually hear you.
Love it.
Last point is analytics. And this is another one of I love analytics. So if you need any help with your analytics, send me a DM. This is just a really great way to see what's resonating with your audience. So look at your best performing posts, look at your worst performing posts. What trends are you seeing? Like, are all your best reels 6 seconds and all your worst reels 1.5 minutes? Or I don't know, I think they cut them off at 1 minute now, but you know what I mean? Just look for the trends. Like we always say, a failed post is great information. Do not archive that. Just leave it, let it be, see what happens with the analytics. And don't feel bad about it. It's great information to see what's resonating with your audience, what's not, what type of content do they like, what type of caption do they like, what type of graphic. Just look at the commonalities between your best and worst performing posts, and you'll get a lot of insight into what's resonating with your audience. And it also helps when you're doing content creation, because you can see, oh, these types of posts not really worth my time anymore, and these types of posts I'm going to do a lot more of those because my audience is loving those. And one last thing about analytics is you can also see in there, like, who are your followers, what gender are they, what age are they, where are they, when are they online. There's lots of great information that you can get from analytics, so make sure you're checking those at least every few months.
So that's kind of it for us. And we just want to say thank you so much for spending time with us, because we know entrepreneurship is so busy, and you choosing to spend time with us means the world. So like we said with Christine and Maria, you can find us at the Social Snippet or by our names, and we'll link all of that for you. And if you go over to our website, you'll see that we've got a number of awesome freebies you can check out, whether that be our quiz that tells you what platform you should be on, our 31 story starters. Like, we've got lots of good stuff for you. So we'd love to have you over there. But shoot us a message on Instagram and let us know what you think or what resonated today. That means the absolute world to us. And thank you again so much for having us. We appreciate it so much. And we're so excited for you to build your digital community online and stay in touch.